It sits on a worn-out stretch of Hollywood Boulevard, a museum piece from an era when cars were Model Ts and the customers were Faulkner, Fitzgerald, Fairbanks, and Pickford. Musso and Frank first opened in 1919 on this very spot. The Musso experience begins when you come in through the back entrance, as everyone does and always has. You take a step down and go back to a time when cocktails were strong and steaks truly sizzled, just as they do now. Back then, the guy in charge was John Musso. In a way, he still is. This is his great-grandson.
This room was built in 1934. Everything in here is original from 1934. So the wood paneling, all original, the wallpaper. I get the question a lot, do you ever think about replacing the wallpaper? And absolutely not. I mean, there's no way. Because, I mean, you got like Humphrey Bogart's cigar smoke in that wallpaper. How can you possibly change that out, you know?
Mark Echeverria and his family understand. Musso's history is their history, and it's not just the front of the place. History is everywhere, like back in the kitchen. It's massive. Old machines churning out new dishes, capable of feeding a small army, something it still does after all these years. Upstairs, the old chef's nest looks down on the action, same as it ever was.
My great-grandfather, who bought the restaurant in 1927, would always tell my grandmother, who then passed it down to us, if you're on a straight road and it's going good, don't make a left turn. And we never made a left turn. We just stayed true, stayed authentic, and kept it real and kept it comfortable, and here we are 100 years later.
So what do you hope folks walk away with after their experience here?
When they walk out of the restaurant, one, I want them to be full. I want them to be satisfied, you know, that they got a good meal. Mm-hmm. But I want them to walk out of here going, wow, that was impressive. And not just about the food. I want them to really kind of soak in the ambiance of the restaurant, because the ambiance is where that old Hollywood is.
You can't help but soak. This place oozes ambiance. This is the back room. Then, and now.
So when you talk about all those literary giants of, you know, kind of early Hollywood, like Fitzgerald and Dashiell Hammett and William Saroyan and all those guys about sitting at our bar, this is the actual bar that they would sit at. And the bar stools, the same bar stools that they would probably fall off of at times, you know. Fitzgerald, he was known for coming back here and making his own mint juleps.
Mint juleps may have been Fitzgerald's drink of choice, but martinis are a major part of the Musso lore. Why is the martini the drink to have here? Where did that come from?
You know, it's just the drink that we've been making the longest, and it's the best in America. That's not us saying that. That's been written about. A couple reasons. One, we stir, we don't shake. James Bond got it wrong. You know, a stirred martini is the best to get that real kind of silky flavor coming out of the liquor. We also serve it in a very small martini glass with a little sidecar that's chilled in a cup of crushed ice. So no matter how late you get into your drink, you're still sipping a very, very cold martini, and that's the key to a good martini.
Cocktails, wood paneling. The new room has bragging rights as the slightly younger half of the place, but it's made up for those years with legendary tales of its own.
This room is got a little bit of a different feel than that other room because all the booths are fixed, and you really can't fit more than 3 or 4 in here. So this room is very intimate. You know, it's very conducive to conversation, and this is the room that Marilyn Monroe would really like to sit in.
Okay, now why would she prefer in here versus the other room?
I think this room, it's got that romanticism, that element of love and sort of intimate, and she liked that. She also liked to be seen, and so she would sit in this booth, and people, when they would come in, you know, they would see her.
The most famous booth is named after Charlie Chaplin, and its history is amazing.
The reason this became his booth is, if you notice, nowhere in the restaurant there's any windows, except right here. And Charlie Chaplin had his studio down the street on La Brea, and he would race his horse with whoever, usually Rudolph Valentino, but he would race his horse to Musso's for lunch. Loser would have to buy. But he would tie their horses up outside, and he would sit here so he could watch the horses.
Strange to contemplate horses on Hollywood Boulevard, but you do when you come to Musso's. It's part of the magic.
So there's a lot of cool things in this restaurant, one of which would be this phone booth.
Oh my gosh, is there an actual phone in it?
There is. This was the first public phone in Hollywood. was right here.
So it's probably a very popular thing back then.
It is, it is, and even today.
A few years back, the whole restaurant watched in amazement as a priest came in and married a couple by the famous phone booth.
And they actually got married in this telephone booth.
Oh my gosh, I hope they're still together.
I think they are. I think they are.
I want to believe that.
Let's go with it. They are. They're together.
Okay.
No.
Back in the kitchen, things were getting serious. There have only been 3 executive chefs over Musso's 100 years. J.P. Amato is the new guy.
As a kid, I used to come here when I was really young.
JP has his own Musso history. He told us the story in front of Musso's incredible charcoal grill. These seats are considered the best in the house. Just beware the flying embers.
And sit right over here, one of these chairs, and he used to tell me stories, and we used to sit and have flannel cakes from Domingo. Right here is famous flannel cakes.
Oh, JP's dad, Rod, was Humphrey Bogart's stunt double. He brought him to the restaurant in the early 1970s. Now, JP is creating his own legacy, especially at the old grill. Musso's menu is a trip back in time. Some of the dishes are straight out of the 40s and 50s. It's a careful collaboration that mixes old and new. The chicken pot pie recipe dates back to 1923.
Yeah.
What is in your chicken pot pie?
What's inside is we make a bechamel, which is made of, you take a roux and you infuse milk inside, and we put herbs and spices. And then inside we have pearl onions, carrots, and peas.
I need to try this.
Okay.
It's beautiful. Today, the Musso legacy appears to be intact. Echeverria and his family saved it in the mid-2000s. Signs of the past are everywhere, and some of the waiters, like Sergio, have been here for nearly 50 years. You can come here for lunch and dinner 6 days a week. Musso's is closed Mondays, but the place is usually packed, so plan ahead and make reservations. And if you do, you might just see a glimpse of Marilyn or Bogey, or at least a whiff of his cigar. So it's your 100-year anniversary this year. What are the challenges of staying around and staying vital for that long?
The biggest challenge, Christy, is taking a very old restaurant, but bringing it to what a modern day experience, somebody wants today, without ruining the historical integrity of the past. Gore Vidal had the best line I've ever heard of anybody explaining that feeling when you step into Musso's. He said, stepping into Musso's is like stepping into a warm bath.